somehow I have the feeling that you could think, wait, I've already seen this. Perhaps this is a déjà vu. Don't freak your freak. With your brain, everything is completely fine, I think. And this is not a déjà vu, but I again have some napkins on my desk today, and that has a reason. I want to make something together with you today to show you, of course, what it is, and because I have found out something after my last video with napkins, and I thought this could be interesting for you as well. Welcome, it's Luise Heinzel, again with some napkins. Welcome to another video of my junk journal bucket list series. If you are new to my channel, my junk journal bucket list is like only in my head. It's not something that I have written down, but like you would do it with a normal bucket list. But on that list, there are some things that I always wanted to do regarding to junk journaling. Some things that are like unfinished in my craft room, things that I always wanted to try out, like for example, making faux rice paper with napkins. Today we are going to turn this idea into something slightly different. We are going to make some really sturdy collage paper. And those are the things, you know, no time, or you are not in the mood, or something similar. Those things are on my junk journal bucket list, and I wanted to use February, which is my month of birth, to celebrate a little like bucket list party and do all of those things, and or let's say some of those things. And with that, there's going a lot of experimenting on here in my craft room. And with that, I found something out that I want to show you today. If you are new here and if you perhaps have missed the other bucket list videos, then you can find a playlist linked below this video, and there you can find everything. And if you see this video without having seen the other video with the napkins, then I can recommend to watch the other video first, because today I will not go into so much detail about all of the different things that you could have in mind if you do this for the first time. So it makes sense to watch the other video like, you know, a base for this here. So when I stopped recording the other video and had some things still laying on my desk here, I found something out. Please excuse my hands, this is just some black ink. Because I want to stamp today, and I've already recorded my German video, and from that I have this. So what do we need? We need a normal glue mixed with water, meaning a white glue, like school glue, some kind of PVA glue. And I have mixed that with water. I've already put that into this little jar here, because, you know, you learn something when you do things. The last time I had it in a jar and mixed it there, but this, of course, is way better because you can close it and store it in your craft room. This originally was the junk journal glue by Funkelkram, which is a German brand, and the bottle was approximately until here filled with glue, and then I've added water until the bottle was full. It's not shaked, shoken it. Is that the past of shake? I don't know. Put it in the jar, shake it, and then let it sit for a while so that you don't have this foam on the top. You know that if you have ever mixed water and glue, and then it's like this. This is that brown because I've added some instant coffee powder. You know, this is just this dry stuff here, this dry powder, which you can mix with water, and then you have something that looks like coffee but tastes terrible. The smell is okay, but I wouldn't call this coffee. But for paper crafting, this is of course really good. I've added approximately a little less than a tablespoon to my mixture here, stirred it really well, and then the coffee got dissolved, and we have this brown mixture, because I found out that when I use napkins from my stash, like this here, for example. So this is also only the top layer. This is relatively colorful. It's absolutely beautiful. But for my projects, I need something that is a little bit more muted and brownish and vintage and grungy. Do you know what I mean? But you could do all of this also without the coffee. Yeah, for sure. Why not? Then you would see the colors on your napkin way better later, and they would not be so, they won't be so vintage, grungy and brown. So what do we need? We're going to take some napkins where we remove the printed layer, and that is what we want to use. Those white layers we can use for something else. And then we are going to need something which we can use for stamping and which is permanent. And we are going to stamp onto our media surface mat if we have one. So the screen is relatively, I mean, I've zoomed in very close. You can see it's this mat, which has these corners here from Tim Holtz and Tonic Studios, which you can put to your glass mat. And it's, of course, the same material like this, which you could have in a smaller size on your mat here on the right side as well. Or I think it's also available for left-handed people, but you know, this is the same material. We are going to stamp to this mat today. So what I want to mention before you take out your things and craft along with me, your mat will get dirty in the end, and you have to live with that if you want to do this. Yeah, so please have in mind that your mat will not be white anymore in the end. If you can't handle that, I can give you some alternatives. You could also use some baking paper, some freezing paper, well, how is that said? Called freezer paper, I think is the right word. I guess that that would work as well, even if I haven't tried it yet because it's not available here in my area, but I think that works. Or one of you has suggested in the comments below the other video, you could also use some heavier plastic shopping bags. You need something where you can glue your napkin on with your mixture of glue and water, and where you can peel that off later really easily. If you're not sure what you could use, then please use something that can't be destroyed, yeah, that you don't need anymore later, or where you can say, okay, if it's going to become a fail, it's not the end of the world, and then just try it on a small spot, glue a piece of, tiny piece of napkin and try if you can peel it off after it's dry, yeah? But I know that many of you have this media surface mat, and I found something out, woohoo, that is really, that is really cool. So, and for that, and that's what I want to show you, of course, we need a permanent ink. I have 3 different ink pads here. You could use archival ink. I have taken out my black ink pads so that you can only look at the name and that you're not confused by the color. The color, of course, is your choice. You could use archival ink. You could use StazOn ink. You could use VersaFine Clear and any other like permanent ink pad. When it comes to working on the media surface mat, and we are talking about permanent inks or permanent mediums, then you could think, Tim has said the mat gets stained. Yes, it gets stained, and it will look something like this here with the time. That is normal. Yeah, some people ask or say, I can't clean my mat completely after crafting on it, and that is totally normal. Yeah, perhaps you have missed that information when other people talk about that, so that's why I'm saying it here. It's totally normal that the mat gets stained, because the mat is made to protect your table, and it's a work surface. Yeah, so it's normal that it gets stained. And please don't freak your freak and don't rub over this with something, heavy or scratchy to get it clean, because then you will destroy the mat, but it's still then not clean anymore in the end, but it's destroyed. Do you know what I mean? We need something that is permanent for stamping, and that can't be, that is not water reactive. Yeah, so because then that doesn't work. I will show you an example of a fail later on in the video. Meaning we can choose one of these and it is a problem to do it with the Distress ink and Distress Oxide inks. I have tried that. I will later on in the video show you my video footage from the German video. I've already recorded that, and it became a fail, but in an interesting fail, I would say. It's not a happy accident because I did it on purpose, and I will not throw it into my trash can, but it doesn't work so well with these kind of ink pads. What you choose from here is obviously your choice. I'm going to use VersaFine Clair because this is the juiciest ink pad I have. This is already a little bit dried out, and this is so small. I want to use like bigger stamps, and with this small ink pad, you know, it's relatively hard to get the ink everywhere. So I'm going to use this, but that is the only reason that I use this. You could also use both of these. What are we going to do? We are going to take one layer of our napkin. And by the way, you could also alternatively use tea bags. I will do that later on in the video as well. This is somehow even easier because this material doesn't tear so extremely like a napkin, and it's good, perhaps a good alternative because I think everyone has tea bags, and it's really easy compared to a napkin. And the good thing is we have no print on here. So if you don't like something like this, then you could use a tea bag or, of course, the white layers of your napkin. So let's do this. First of all, we have to choose a stamp. And I'm thinking about something that matches this pattern, which is already here on my napkin. So let's see. Let me quickly take my basket here, otherwise I have a problem with my neck in the end. So what could we use? I want to have something which is not too detailed, because we already have these things there. Shall we perhaps take these numbers? Let's try those. So this stamp set is not weeded yet. I say you the number and the name. This is Merchant CMS 331. Every stamp set I use in this video is by Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz. So if I show you the names, I will only say the name and the number to save us some time. But I want to say the names and the numbers because so many people ask. I mean, if I don't say it, then you ask. You know what I mean? So I'm going to take this. You could also use the single stamps, of course, but I want to use this additional rubber here as an advantage so that I can just ink everything here. And now I'm going to stamp that to my media surface mat. Is that something Tim has demoed in his video? No, it isn't, but it's cool. So let me just quickly move this thing here so that you can see that better. And then I'm going to take this whole thing and stamp that here to my mat. If you have the plastic on here, this, you know, where the stamps are on, then you can also take a brayer to get more pressure, but try to don't move the stamp. I mean, it's the same with paper, yeah. We don't want to move the stamp. And then we have something like this. Really imperfect impression of this stamp set, but that is exactly what we want to have. If you do this and you think, that is not perfect and I don't like that, then this technique is perhaps not so good for you. Then do something else, yeah, because this is going to become imperfect in the end. And the reason for doing this and making collage paper with this technique is relatively easy. I really love collage paper and I love using collage paper, and I also like this, you know, this flimsy feeling of it when I have it in my hands. But when it comes to using it or making collage paper by yourself, meaning taking a thin paper and stamping to it, it wrecks my nerves. Because if you want to make your own collage paper, the first thought you could have is, I take some tissue paper or something similar. This is from one of the Ranger packages. When I got an order from Ranger, I got this. But you can also find this really thin and translucent paper in, for example, boxes when you buy shoes. And this would be the perfect collage paper material, of course. But when I lay this down to my desk and I try to stamp on it, it drives me crazy because it always moves. It makes this noise. I like paper noises or these paper sounds, but when I want to stamp, I don't like this. I really, I can't handle that. Sometimes in the boxes, when they package your things really well, it's also like, you know, crumbled like this. Then you would have to, for example, iron it to get a nice stamp impression. So why shall we use that when we can do this? I know this is going to become imperfect, but the other thing as well, when the paper is like crumbled. Yeah, so perhaps it's an alternative for you as well. So then I'm going to place this here very carefully after I have dried this a little bit. And I say a little bit because even if I have taken my heat gun a second ago, this still smears. Can you see? I don't want to do it, you know, that's the reason why my fingers are like this. It still smears, but it holds the shape of the stamp impression. So it will not like bleed. It would bleed if you would stamp with these, because when we now add our glue, water coffee mixture, I can press this down without any problems and I can carefully go over this without any pressure and just paint on my glue. If you haven't seen the other video where I explain this rice paper technique very detailed, then please watch the other video. I will not go into deep detail about this basic technique in this video, but as you can see, this works really well and you can already see that the shape of the stamp impression stays like it is, and that is good. That is what you want to have. If you would move the napkin while doing this, you would just wipe this off. Yeah, it would be like you would clean the mat and you would take, for example, something like this, and you would go over this and clean the mat. Yeah, then you have something like this and we don't want that. Then it looks ugly in the end. So I'm going to try to add my glue here, like, you know, as carefully as possible. I don't add pressure with my paintbrush to the napkin so that I then have this glue water mixture everywhere and everything is soaked really well, especially the edges, so that we can later on peel this off really easily. You have the chance to go over this once it sticks down to the mat. You can go over this a little bit and, like, you know, make this flat a little bit. You could also try to take your finger and just move this a little bit. That doesn't seem to be a problem. That's what I've experienced, but please try that out. It of course depends perhaps also on the mixture of your water and glue. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that I don't have any air bubbles in here, because the goal is to transfer the stamp impression to the napkin. And for that, this needs to be relatively flat, and air bubbles would be not so good. But as you can see through here and it stays in place, in shape. Yeah, I think that's better, the better word. So I'm trying to press these air bubbles out from here so that everything is nice and flat. Of course, you could also crumble this and make this really grungy, but then your stamp impression is of course way more loose later than with this method. And if you think I don't have napkins and what shall I do here, let me quickly say that as well. If you perhaps are new here, and you have accidentally clicked to this video, welcome. And perhaps you think, oh, I don't have the same materials. These videos that I publish in February are also meant for you to have something that you can listen to or watch while you are crafting on your own bucket list things. Perhaps you have an own junk journal bucket list, or perhaps you have other things to do, but you don't want to craft alone. Then you can take these videos and take your iPad or whatever and have that on your desk while you are crafting on something totally different. So I thought, I mean, the main goal behind these videos is that we can craft together. Yeah, do you know what I mean? And this is also, yeah, a month with a lot of experimenting and things that I have never done before, because those are also the things that are on my junk journal bucket list. And I haven't had the time to try several things out. And, you know, then something like this also happens, that you try something out, like with the rice paper, and then you end up in something that you haven't expected, or end up with something you haven't expected. You know what I mean. So let's do the same thing with the tea bags. These are from different kinds of teas. Some of them, here's also some spray stain already on it. I think this is vintage photo spray stain. This was originally relatively white. The tea has left only a little bit of staining here. This was, I think, from fruit tea. This could be black tea. I have no idea. You can take any tea bag you have. So I also want to try to stamp a relatively delicate impression. I want to use Floral Trims CMS 461 for doing that. Let's see if we can get a nice result if we take such a detailed stamp, because with these numbers, the original stamp impression of the numbers is already little, you know, distressed and rough and that stuff. And it doesn't matter if it gets not so concrete on here, but what about this, and how can this come out? Let's see. Naja, this looks relatively good. I mean, stamping on a surface like the media surface mat, of course, is a tiny little bit like stamp, but you know, it's a hard comparison. It's a tiny little bit like stamping on the rough and textured side of a watercolor paper. When you take the smooth side of a watercolor paper, you get this really crisp and clear lines, and if you take the other side, which has the texture, then you end up with something like this. And I think it's comparable, even if this is like, you know, it's not paper. But if we have in mind how a stamp impression would come out on the textured side of a watercolor paper, then this is relatively good. That's what I was trying to say, and why I tried to compare it. Meaning, if you see your stamp impression on here, don't freak your freak and think, oh no, it's not good enough, it's not good enough. You have to have in mind that you will get a rough and imperfect result in the end. And what I also found out during my German video, make sure when you have your fingers and I mean, how does that sound? When you glue this down and you have your fingers on the tea bag, press that down on the edge, or for example, where no ink is below the tea bag, press it down, and then take the mixture here, put the paintbrush down and wait a little bit, and then go into this direction and wait a little bit until the glue has soaked through the material of the tea bag, and then try to get this flat. Don't here it's different with the napkin. On the napkin you can just put the paintbrush down and start painting this on. The tea bag material is a little different, so it's, I guess, thicker, and it takes a longer time until the glue can soak completely through the material. So I can recommend to put that there, wait a little bit, and then the tea bag sticks in this spot already to the mat, and then you can just go over this and flatten it out. And another thing is, if you have some sticky things on your fingers, for example, you've touched this and you have some glue on your fingers, make sure that you lift off your fingers from the tea bag very, very carefully, because you don't want to move this now. You don't want to have the tea bag sticking on your finger and lift the whole thing up, because it has gotten stuck to your fingers. That could be then a problem, because then you would you could still smear the ink now. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. And if you would lift this up, then yeah, it's destroyed. So it has to stay here until it's completely dry. But that also gives me another thought, and I'm thinking, can I perhaps, because I just thought the whole time we are talking about, we are gluing this down and then we are going to let it dry. But what happens if we peel it off now? Not so much. Okay. Thank you. We are just going to leave it there. Because I thought if we could lift it off now, then it would dry, of course, way faster than leaving it on the mat. Okay. Next one. I want to know if we can, I mean, we have used really bold stamps here with a solid surface and a solid image somehow. This is really delicate with really thin lines, but the flowers on this stamp also have these bigger open spaces. But what about a stamp like, for example, the Professor, or in this case, the Inspector? He wants to do this. He came out by itself. What about the Inspector CMS 465? You can see this stamp has a ton of details, and if you are not a stamping expert, like I am not a stamping expert, you probably need some tries until you get the perfect stamp impression and the right paper. If you know about the right paper, this is absolutely no problem, yeah? But if you, for example, would stamp this to the textured side of a watercolor paper, you would never get all of the details. So you need something really smooth to stamp on, and then this is an absolutely amazing stamp, of course. But what about this surface? And what about all of those details on this mat? I want to know that. But let's plan that a little bit, so that this collage paper later on already looks really nice. Let's stamp him here to the bottom, and perhaps other elements of that set here to the top. So why don't I use an acrylic block for stamping here? I have the feeling when I do it like this, this is better. But to be honest, I haven't thought about using an acrylic block. Don't know why. Perhaps we can do that for the next stamp impression. So let me quickly put this out of the way. That already looks really, really good, I would say. And if you don't have stamps, you could of course also take other, like, how is that said, things from your daily life, you know, what you can find in your house. If you have an ink pad which is waterproof, then you could stamp with other things as well. Yeah, you could also take a glass and ink the edge of the glass, and then make just make circles or something like that. That would also be possible. Of course, you don't need stamps. And if you want to stamp, you know, we have glued this down and you want to stamp here, make sure that this is dry and that you don't get this glue water mixture to your stamp, because then, I mean, it's not the end of the world. You can clean that, of course, but I would recommend to pay attention to that, because then you save some time, because you don't need to clean that. I mean, from the glue, yeah, you need to clean it from, you need to wipe off the excess of the ink, but you don't struggle with having glue on here. Okay, so let's perhaps stamp this here. Did I just say I want to use a stamp, a stamping block, acrylic block? Why haven't I done that now? You know, sometimes, I mean, this is somehow exciting for me as well, because, for example, this stamp I haven't tried yet. This stamp I have tried in the German video, but it's still drying on the side there. I haven't revealed the results for my German video yet, because I thought I'd take the drying time for the German stuff to record this. So this is somehow exciting, because that is German, Luise. For some stamps, I don't know what's going to happen, and that's why I'm a little confused, because I have to concentrate what I'm doing here, and at the same time, you know, let the things that I can see here sink in, so that we can get the most out of this. Yeah, that works even better, look. Use your fingers if you want to have some imperfections, and use a stamping block if you want to have something like this. That is good to know. But what I also want to know is what happens if we dry this a little bit and then stamp something else over it. Because if you would use tissue paper or something like that for making like collage paper in the traditional way, let's say it like that, then you would also probably stamp one layer of stamps, and then you would stamp something else over that to get this collage paper look. And I want to know if that is possible here or if it's not possible. I mean, if these turn out great, you can later on, of course, take the material of the tea bag, and then you can still stamp on it, and you could say, okay, this is my first layer. I let it dry, peel it off, and then stamp to it again as a second layer. You can still stamp on this later, there's no problem. But I want to see if we can get like a collage paper result in this first step, so that we can also think about the design in this stage of the stamping process already. So let's take perhaps this one here. And perhaps you watch this and you think, ooh, this takes a long time. Please don't be confused about the length of these videos in February. As I already said, I want to give you something where you can craft along with me and spend a little bit of time with me. That's the main goal behind that. Oh my goodness, that looks amazing. And of course, if you would do something like this in your own room, at your own desk, you would probably not do it like I do it here, stepwise. Do you know what I mean? You would probably try something out. For example, what you like better, napkins or tea bags or other materials that you have. And then you would probably stamp your whole surface and then glue the things down instead of stamping, gluing, stamping, gluing, stamping, gluing. Yeah, so that would be way faster than I'm doing it here. And it's for me, of course, also like, I don't want to say a problem, but I of course wanted to explain my thoughts, and that makes that this whole thing takes a little longer than it would take for you, of course. But sometimes when you see videos, you could also get a little like confused about that, because sometimes, for example, you watch you watch how someone is crafting a card, for example, and the video is 10 minutes long, and that's because the person has edited the video so that the person only gives, I don't mean that bad, yeah? You get the single steps of how the person has made the card. And you don't have this like chat kind of thing. You don't have experimenting because the steps are clear. You don't have things like you have in this video. Do you know what I mean? And then you could think, oh, this card was made in 10 minutes. And if you then go to your desk and follow those steps, which have been shown in the video, you will probably come to the conclusion that the person has needed more than 10 minutes. That's a normal thing, of course. But this is the same phenomenon, but the other way around. This takes way longer. When I sit here and explain everything and, you know, chat with you as well, it takes way longer than if you would do this by your own and do a whole bunch of these collage paper things. So, if this will turn out like here, then I will be very happy. That is something that I can already tell you. So let's dry this. Oh, and I also want to say something about the comments below my video from February 4th, which was my birthday, and where we had this little party with some music on Sasha's channel. I totally forgot to say that in my last video, which was the one which came out directly after my birthday, but I wanted to say that because I was a little bit angry that I have forgotten about that in the last video. But the cover from this journal from the last video, it was like it you know, I had some struggles with that cover, and then I totally forgot that what I wanted to say, because after this living room concert on Sasha's channel has ended, don't know, when it was over, we had a little Instagram call. He called me so that we could talk a little bit about his experience and my experience on that evening. And I wanted to say that, I mean, he gave me this message for you. So that's what I'm trying to say, Louisa. I really get nervous when I think about this Sunday, because it was such a crazy day. You have you have done so crazy things that is just incredible. So he gave me a little message for you, because he wants you to know that he was completely overwhelmed in such a positive way. He has never experienced something like that on his channel in a live video, and you have not only blown me away, but him as well. He was so happy, and he is really thankful for this experience, and I think he will also never forget that day. And if you have missed that video, some of you have asked me that as well. I'm still reading hundreds and hundreds of comments every single day, because I'm just too slow to read everything. in one day or so. Oh no. Oh no, here's a little bit of, oh no, here's a little bit of tea. This, like, you know, little crumble of tea. Yeah, let's see, perhaps it works. I'm just too slow to read all of the comments at the same time, but what I read very often is that you excuse that you had no time to come to the living room concert. And that is, I mean, you wanted to join and you are sad now, and I'm sad then as well, yeah, if you have missed it. But please don't excuse, yeah. We will definitely have a second and third and fourth chance to do this together, I'm sure. As soon as I know about that, I will let you know about that as well. The living room concert is once a month on Sasha's channel. It's on every first Sunday each month. So the next one is going to be on March the 3rd. If you want to put that into your calendar, then please do that. Or write it down or whatever. And it's always 6 p.m. Central European Time. You can use the time converter below my video on February the 4th. There's a time converter. But you can also click to YouTube. Once he has set up the live stream, then you can automatically see the right time. But what I also wanted to say is there's a replay of the concert from Sunday, and you can watch that as well. I will link the video down below for you so that you can find it directly. So you don't have to be sad if you have missed it. I know that watching a replay is not the same like being there live, but so many have asked if you can watch the replay, and especially if you can read the chat. And yes, Sasha has left the chat on the channel, so next to the video, but you have to activate that. There have been so many questions that I thought, okay, let's talk about that quickly in this video so that you all know about that. You can click to the link, and then depending on the device you're using for watching that, there's somewhere a little button which says show the chat. And if you click to that button, you can, yeah, it's nearly like live. The chat is running next to the video or below the video, depending on the device. And then you can read exactly what has been written, you know, while that was live. Is this already enough for having examples for what we have here? Yes, I think so. And I also have the examples from the German video so that I can show you a lot in a few seconds. So I'm going to let this dry and then we can reveal the results. Oh. Oh, the moment of truth. This is completely dry. And when I see this now, I'm really happy because when this is dry, you can already guess what you will get. And if this is going to turn out only half of amazing like in the German video, which I just recorded a second ago, then be prepared that your mind is going to be blown in a second. And before I lift this up or peel this off, if you use the media surface mat, then please make sure, if you want to hang that in front of a heat source, meaning a heater or, you know, something like that, that you cover your floor with, for example, a towel, or that you put a little something, a baking tray or something, there where this hangs. Because when you have the whole glue water mixture on here, this will not soak that medium. And with that, when you hang it, then it can happen that it drops off a little bit. The other day I had a little surprise on my floor. If you use baking paper, then you won't have such a big problem with drops of the mixture, because the baking paper soaks this mixture relatively well, and then it doesn't drop so much, but please make sure that you don't ruin your floor. Oh. So then, as you can see, you can peel this off really easily. Ta-da. Use this little schmutz and this little schmutz for the next time you want to do this. And be happy that you have something like this. You can see, and you would have to use different mediums to reach such an effect on a normal, like this kind of paper. Because, for example, look at this one here. You can see that the pattern of the napkin is on top of the black. Meaning, if you would try something like this on a normal piece of paper, or like a tissue paper or something like that, then, or like, you know, a collage paper material, then you would have to use, for example, the VersaFine Clear for stamping the black, and then you would need some oxide ink to stamp that over this, and then you would get, yeah, let's say a similar effect. The oxide ink would then layer on the black, but this, I mean, how easy is this? And if you, for example, don't have such a big stamp collection, and you have, for example, let's say you only have the numbers and that's your only stamp, then you won't need a second stamp, but you can use the pattern of the napkin for the second layer of stamping. If you don't know how this was made, then it looks like stamped with black and then stamped with this beige, like brushed corduroy color, oxide ink color. Brushed corduroy oxide ink looks similar to this. The ink looks different, I know. From the back it looks like this, and I really like that the intensity of the back is even more intense than the front. I mean, that is one thing, but it is comparable. Imagine you have a, let me quickly pick that up. Imagine you would have a piece of collage paper. This is from the Tim Holtz Ideology collage paper. Then, of course, this is really intense. And if you glue it like this, you would get something like a faded thing as well. But it's somehow different. Do you know what I mean? I love this collage paper. I really love this paper, yeah. But this somehow is also interesting, isn't it? And stamp your numbers from your stamps mirrored. I mean, how do you do that? Yeah, it's really easy. And I also love these like shadow thingies here. Can you see that? There the ink has moved a little bit. Also here with the 5. And that makes, of course, really nice collage fodder and a really nice thing for a background for something. So let's peel off this tea bag. Oh yes, oh yes, it worked. Even with this really delicate stamp. Oh, I have no space to put this out of my way. Amazing. This is just amazing. And I also love this staining here from the spray stain, which already was on the tea bag before we've done this. And what I also like, these little lines. Can you see these lines? That would be really hard to do with, yeah, another technique. And because of that, this is amazing. And I'm really amazed how black this is. Because when you stamp to the mat, the ink goes into these little holes, these tiny holes. I mean, they are tiny, but they are there. Because of the material of the mat, of course. And that is really impressive that it is this dark. And this is just so, so cool. Another thing that comes to my mind, I've done this here with 3 tea bags, and I've, you know, glued them together here because I've stamped, and 1 tea bag would have been not enough for, yeah, covering the whole stamping. But imagine you would, for example, stamp the inspector, and then you glue 1 tea bag here, and you would take another piece of the tea bag and then glue that, for example, here over his eye, or like horizontally over both eyes. How cool would that be? You can still do this, I guess. I mean, I guess I could take another piece of tea bag now and glue this on top. Why not? But that gives an additional interest to this piece. I mean, look at this darker area. That looks really, really cool. And what I especially like about this, and the German result, I always say that like that, it's a bit confusing. The result from the German video with the inspector is, I would say, even more interesting. I will show you that in a second. Look at these little imperfections, which came from the tea that was left on my tea bag. Tell me another technique how you can reach such an effect. I can't think about such a technique. I don't know how you would do that on, you know, if you would take this as a design for a card, for example, for a greeting card. You would have to take a paper, then you would have to make a background which has this color, which is relatively subtle. If you want to have this effect here, you would have to glue something down before you stamp. Imagine you glue something down before you stamp, then you would have a problem in these areas to stamp that would never turn out like this because of the different levels of the materials, yeah? Or the material is it's only one material, Louise. But you know what I mean. You would probably get a little gap in the stamping here because of the different levels of the material. And then you would have to take something which is similar to this tea, meaning something that makes this texture and the color at the same time. Imagine you would take some, for example, grit paste and put that to your inked background. Then the grit paste would soak the ink, the grit paste would get stained, but you would never get something like this, where this little brown dot is, then there's this white around and this crater thing around the white. How to get that? That's not possible. On a normal card with grit paste, you would have to let this dry and then stamp over it. But I guess that then this wouldn't get like this because grit paste, you know, it's you could try that, of course, but I think that wouldn't be possible to get it like this. I will show you the result of the inspector from the German video, because there this tea effect is even extremer. Look, this looks like torn out from a really antique book. Here also there's this little piece of something. I mean, it's a tea bag, but imagine that on a card. This little imperfection there, like this nearly looks like a little tape or something. Here the tea bag stayed dry because I've glued it here where this corner from the mat is, and this corner from the tea bag was overlapping over this, and it had no glue, meaning this makes it even more interesting. And I also made the experience now with the tea bag material, which is way more sturdy than the napkin material. You could do this on purpose, meaning you could, let's do that. I will show you. I don't want to bother you, but I want to show you alternatives. And of course, I want to encourage you to experiment with your own Ich habe es schon wieder so gesagt. Barbara, hast du es gehört? I want to encourage you to experiment with what you have. And also taking something, I want you to get this, you know, this vision of doing something else with what you already have in another try. I don't know how I can say that. Let's stamp the professor. He is not the professor, Louise, the inspector here again. And I will show you then my result on Instagram. You will see that there then, because I don't want to bother you. And this has to dry, of course, as well. So we have this. Now I lost what I wanted to say. Oh my goodness. If I see this, and you often ask me, Louise, how do you improve the things that you got from experimenting? And if I now see this, I have the following thoughts in my head. When I made the faux rice paper in this like rice paper, collage paper, with the napkin material, I thought it's good, and I'm still thinking that, to cover the whole thing here with glue to the very edge. Don't leave something like this here, like dry, on your napkin material. I still think that that is a good idea, because I made the experience that the napkin tears really easily when you later on want to peel it off from your mat. But in this case, I learned something. The tea bag material is way sturdier, and you can get it off way easier than the napkin material, meaning you can leave something like this on here, and you can use this as an advantage for the design of your tea bag, of course, by doing the following thing. I need a big tea bag now, and I want to have one where a lot of tea is left. Then, I mean, after we got something like this, we can of course think about how to improve that. If we think this is too much grunge, use a tea bag which has not so much tea on it left. And if you think I want to have more grunge, then, you know, use a tea bag that has a lot of tea on it. But here, this is this enough already? I guess this also, yeah, it's a question of experience, I would say. I guess you have to do this several times to, yeah, to be able to see in advance what's going to happen here. But this tea bag is perfect for this image. Can you see why? Because here in the middle it's white, and here it's already stained like a frame around him. And now I'm trying to line up this part of the stamp with this bottom, with this, you know, where the white ends and the brown starts, just like this. And since I know, oh my goodness, but my but my glue is a little brown, probably we won't see so much of that later. But let's see if we can make something out of this. And now what I was trying to show you is I leave these edges here dry on purpose. Here it happened accidentally, but I can see that I like this effect there. So I can do it on purpose here now. And of course I can do that as extreme like I wanted. For example, I could make such a like line here. The only thing I have to make sure is that the stamped image is completely covered with this. Otherwise, you would lose some of the image later when you peel this off, of course. If you want that, do it. So let's try to get this a little bit more flat. Somehow this tea bag is a little different. And shall we perhaps also try to glue a second piece of tea bag over this so that we can get such a, you know, this darker color which we got here with these cool lines. Shall we try this here? Why not? I don't know why I can't get this completely flat now. This tea bag seems to be a little different, but that's what I meant a second ago. You probably have to try this out several times to see what works the best. But that is with everything. Yeah, I mean, every technique, with every, you know, new medium or something you might have, you have to try that out and practice that. Yeah. So let's do this. Let's take this, or perhaps even a piece which is already relatively irregular and weird. I wanted to try to glue that here just over his eyes, just to see what happens. I mean, nothing is lost if this gets a fail. Perhaps we could do that even extreme, more extreme. And the good thing when this is dry is that you can sew with your sewing machine through this material. The tea bag gets automatically sturdier, of course. Let's make a third layer here. Let's leave it like it is to see if this works. This is like, you know, totally enough. And another cool thing is, and I just come to that idea, two things. First, imagine you have something like this made on a card. And this, imagine this wasn't a tea bag, but everything you can see on the tea bag is on paper. Yeah, on a normal paper like this, or card base or something. And now you think, oh, this background, it's perhaps too light, the wrong color, not detailed enough, or whatever. Try to change the background without ruining your stamped image on a normal card. That's not possible. You would have to start from zero and do everything again. But here, I mean, this is probably not the right color for him, but do you see what I mean? That that looks even really cool. I mean, holy crap. But can you see what I mean? You can just take something else, and because this is translucent, you can see the color through it. And if you would take, for example, something brownish or so, because you think I want to have my card darker, then just put this on a brown piece of paper and you would be finished. Or try to use another napkin layer, glue that down and put that on here. Then you would have something like this around the professor. In his face, I don't like that, but solution, stamp the this is the inspector, Louisa. Oh, what is so difficult about that? It's only just, I mean, it's two different persons. Take the inspector, stamp that to your card. Yeah, like, you know, stamp that to your card. This is your card. Stamp that. Doesn't have to be perfect. Take some scissors and cut it out here and take that piece out. Then you have a hole in your card which has the shape of the inspector. And when you then, you know, the solution, sorry, I've just talked like weird shit. The solution is the following. Take your card, stamp the inspector on it, doesn't have to be perfect. Glue the napkin or whatever you want, other collage paper or whatever, on it. Let that dry and then cut through both of the layers. I will take this off so that you can see it better. Just cut the professor out. Oh, the inspector out. Why haven't I used a butterfly? Cut the inspector out here, just on the line. Take that piece out, because then you have a hole in the shape of the inspector, and you have cut it out from this pattern as well. Take another piece of paper, put that behind to close the hole, and then take this and put that on top, and that way you wouldn't have the pattern behind him. And when I say that, I'm pretty sure there are way easier solutions, but I'm hoping that you understand what I mean, because the possibilities with this are just endless. They are just endless. Another thing is, and that I haven't tried that yet. Look, I came to that idea because in the German video I had something which I made with the oxide ink pad and the ink pad. In this case, the color was Scorched Timber, and the stamp was this one here from Papillon. The number is 106. I stamped this and this with Scorched Timber, Distress ink and oxide ink, and I was expecting, and that is completely normal, that I would get something like this, but I wanted to try it out because with the other ink nothing smears, but Distress ink and Distress oxide ink you can activate with water, meaning as soon as I put my napkin on the stamped image and I add my mixture of water and glue, the ink gets activated and the napkin material soaks the ink so much that you in the end can't see anything anymore. But I wanted to know if it can work, because sometimes, you know, those accidents, those happy accidents, sometimes you think that can't work and then it works. If you don't try it, you will never know it. But this material I got from that, this napkin material is really cool, because take a vintage photo or something else and put that over there. It looks relatively weird at the moment, I know. This looks nearly, in my eyes, like irregular mica. These, you know, mica pieces. And if you would cut a hole where her face is, this would look really amazing, because you get all of this schmutz to the background. This photo is probably a little dark in the background so that you can't see that so well, but I have another one, and this is probably also the better example. Oh, I show you the photo first. Has this lighter thing background around this round thing there, and look how this changes. Just look to this, what is in this beige color. That looks so amazing. And now imagine you would cut a hole in here in the size of the circle on the photo, and then you would have all of this grunge around those two people, and you would have the perfect background within seconds. Make a few for your stash, and then you have that ready to go when you take when you have to if you want to take such a photo and grunge that up. Both sides of the napkin would work. And of course, now you could say, yeah, but you could do that with, you know, ink or some texture paste or something like that as well. Yes, you are totally right. But this is an original vintage photo, or actually it's a postcard. And if you have your mediums in front of you, and perhaps you are new to like mixed media techniques or working with texture paste and ink or something like that, then the chance that you ruin this is pretty high if you have no experience. And even if with more experience, I would say I have experience with wet mediums and like mixed media techniques, but even I would say it's a little dangerous to ruin this photo if you work directly on the photo. And with uncontrollable mediums like pastes and ink, and especially oxide ink, it's also not so easy to visualize how the effect in the end comes out. But imagine you have 5 or 10 or 20 of these in different colors with different amount of grunge, some with a little stamping, some not. You can take this and you can see your result immediately. You don't have to wait for this shit to dry. Sorry when I say that, but this is so easy. And you can decide, do I like this, or do I like if there are, for example, some, where are my mushrooms? If I would put something more like concrete, not so abstract on here, do I like some concrete things with grunge on here? I mean, imagine these mushrooms, cut this out, and yeah, if this was bigger, put the rest here. I mean, what for what else could you wish? I mean, this is like fortune telling, isn't it? You could also this is also from the German video. This is was a napkin. It had a pattern that looked like this. And then I also stamped with the papillon set to that. And look, when you put this here, you can immediately see how this would look. Now you can't see the people so well anymore, but imagine you can do it like this, or you could also do it like this. Look, then you can also see what's going around around the Kreis. What's going on around the circle. Kreis, that's German. You can imagine the intensity of the photo compared to the background, which is going to be here then. Do you know what I mean? This is just amazing. And what you also could do is you could stamp twice. So this is a tea bag. Where's my white paper? This is a tea bag. I stamped to my mat, and then I did this method, you know, which I've just shown you, peeled it off, and I stamped first with this here, with the how are those called, tiny print, floral print, how is that called? Tiny Prints CMS 460. And after I have peeled it off, I've stamped the butterflies from the papillon set over here and this little round thing from the inspector set. And you can see that the intensity of this is so different because the background is now, with these tiny flowers, really backgroundish, isn't it? And this is really black. And even if you lose like a lot of detail, I mean, look at this stamp. It's, if you would stamp this to paper, it would be way more detailed, of course. And if you would if you would stamp it to a plain tea bag, it would get nice and detailed and real. Not this is also nice. If you would stamp it to a plain tea bag, this would get detailed as well. The same on paper. But if you would stamp on a paper, first with this stamp and then with that, you would probably get a similar result. That's what I'm trying to say. We are stamping on a like weird material here and we get such a result. I mean, what? Look at this. Try to get that there with ink. I mean, I love working with ink, yeah? Don't get me wrong. And I will not throw away my ink pads only because I have this now. But imagine the possibilities. You could also take a tea bag and stain that with oxide inks or that stuff and then, you know, do the rest. And look, this saltwater toffee thing behind the butterflies here. How cool is that? Speaking about saltwater toffee, you could also, when you have this stage of the thing, in this stage of the project, you could also take some spray stain or oxide spray or something like that and spray to this while it's still wet and then let that dry. I have done that with this thing. This stamp comes from this set, Bold Botanicals, CMS 462. And I've spritzed saltwater toffee spray stain. I want to dance. Look at these little imperfections. these little tiny, let me show you the stamp itself, so that you can compare that. If you don't have the stamp, then you perhaps can't compare that so well. It is a little distressed on the edges here, but this here, can you see that? It's not on the stamp. It came here through this tea bag. Here, look at this. That's because the little things from the tea were still on the tea bag and made the same cool imperfections like on our inspector a second ago. And if you think, oh, this is perhaps a little too extreme for what I want to do, just take another color, spray that, or, you know, ink a watercolor paper or something like that, and put that then there. Where's the problem? Then you would have this translucent thing, or let's try it perhaps here on a printable. The color changes totally. And if I put it here like so, and I would make a photo, you couldn't tell that this is only on top here. You would think it's part of the design, won't you? That is really cool. Oh, so many possibilities. Yeah, and that is the same effect. Look, I like that you can try this out and that you can see how it would look in the end. Because this, I would never do this. It's way too busy. I mean, it looks nice here. If you would take the portion of the printable, you know, this little scrap paper here, and take a piece of this and glue that down, then it's okay for me. But here, this is way too busy. We lose all of the details here, but you can see it before you do it. That's cool, isn't it? Huh. Okay, you will see this in a finished stage. Yeah, if this is going to be successful, and if I don't get a fail here, I don't think that I get a fail, then you will see this on my Instagram, and you will definitely see something made out of this and this on my Instagram. Before I can do that, I have to make my thumbnail photos for YouTube. Louisa, write it down, otherwise you would have a problem in the end. And then I'm really hoping that you could soak some inspiration from this. To be honest, I haven't expected that it gets that gorgeous. I really haven't expected that. When I started recording, I was like, okay, this is cool and it will turn out really great, but I haven't expected something like that. That is also a thing that I think it's important to be able to also see that in the end of your process, that it's like that, and that it's, you know, that you got something that you haven't expected, because then you can be happy and proud. I know that I can't see the woman here, but look how grungy and brownish and crazy Saltwater Taffy gets in this case. Imagine I would cut a slot where her eyes are. Thanks for imagining that. I know that this is not everyone's taste, but for some things, for like, you know, really grungy and like art, this is in my eyes. If you would have to write a dictionary about terms to describe things, then I would say this is grunge, these little particles of the tea. And this to me is somehow artsy grunge, because it's not brown and it has this, yeah, I mean, I think you got me. Okay, so I will definitely play around a little more here. I'm so hoping that you can feel my enthusiasm about this. You have often given me feedback about that you can feel it. And with that, I'm hoping that you can feel that today as well, and that you now, after seeing this, run into your craft room, take your stamps out, take your media mat out, and try this. Media surface mat out, and try this, or baking paper, or whatever. Happy stamping, happy tea bagging, or napkinning. Hopefully that doesn't mean something totally weird in English. See you the next time. Bye bye. Holy moly!